Every single day in the United States, millions of iPhones don't get used. They get replaced, upgraded, abandoned, and quietly pushed out of sight. But they don't vanish. They slip into a hidden system most people never hear about. A system so massive that the number of old iPhones entering it each year could fill entire sports stadiums. A system so valuable that Apple built robots, actual robots, just to tear these devices apart. Old phones go somewhere. They don't just sit in drawers forever. They enter one of the most complex afterlife journeys in American consumer culture. Some get traded in and reborn. Some get refurbished and resold. Some get dismantled by machines with names like Daisy. And some end up in furnaces hot enough to melt the gold out of their circuit boards. Where do all these iPhones actually go? Back to Apple? Into a warehouse of forgotten devices? Into the hands of refurbishers? Or into giant shredders that turn them into raw materials for the next generation of tech? Inside every iPhone is a tiny fortune in valuable metals, gold, silver, copper, rare earth elements. Enough that a single ton of old phones contains more gold than many actual gold mines. And that's why this hidden system exists. Today, we're following the afterlife of a single old iPhone from the moment it leaves your hand to the moment it becomes something entirely new. Chapter 1. The First Stop. America's iPhone Trade-in Engine. When Americans upgrade their iPhones, the first question they face is a big one. What do I do with my old phone? Some keep it as a backup. Some hand it down to someone in the family. A surprising number toss it into a drawer and forget it exists for the next 8 presidential elections. But the biggest group of all? The ones who trade it in. Trade-ins have quietly become one of the most powerful forces in the US smartphone market. Apple, Best Buy, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. Everyone wants your old device. Not because they're being charitable, but because old iPhones are extremely valuable. The trade-in process seems simple. You answer a few questions online, take your phone to a store, hand it to an employee who gives it a 30-second glance, and walk out with credit toward your upgrade. Easy. But that quick glance is just the beginning. Behind the scenes, your old phone enters a massive network that handles thousands of devices every hour. Apple has its own trade-in program, which is basically a massive intake machine for old iPhones. Carriers operate their own programs, and big refurbishing companies, names like Brightstar, Assurant, PCS Wireless, HYLA Mobile, and Ingram Micromobility process millions of old devices a year. Most consumers have never heard these names, but they are the quiet giants of the used phone economy. Once a trade-in center receives your device, it goes through what can only be described as a full medical exam. Workers run a diagnostic test, check the screen for scratches, test the camera and microphone, look for liquid damage, check the battery cycle count, and even evaluate cosmetic condition with surprisingly specific grading scales. Is the back cracked? Is the screen original? Does the battery still hold a decent charge? Are the screws untouched, or did someone attempt a midnight DIY repair with a butter knife? Every answer affects the phone's value. Some devices are categorized as excellent, some as good, some as usable, and some are politely labeled 4 parts. The entire grading process takes minutes, but it determines the future of the device. A top-tier iPhone might head straight into refurbishment. A scratched-up one might still get a second life. A phone with a dying battery or cracked camera might become a parts donor. And if the phone fails every test, well, its fate is sealed, and not in a happy way. But before we get to the darker side of this story, let's follow the most common route: refurbishment. Chapter 2. The Makeover. Inside the iPhone refurbishment process. If you've ever bought a refurbished iPhone, you might imagine a technician performing delicate surgery with precision tools, soft lighting, and maybe some soothing background music. The reality is much more industrial and far more impressive. Once trade-in iPhones are sorted, the best conditioned devices are sent to specialized refurbishment facilities. These centers look like giant clean labs. Long rows of repair benches, bright lighting, bins full of tiny components, and technicians who can disassemble an iPhone faster than most people can remove a phone case. The first step is a deep inspection. Technicians check the logic board, ports, speakers, cameras, and overall condition. If anything is slightly off, the part is removed and replaced. A cracked back panel? Gone. Scratched screen? Replaced. Weak battery? Swapped for a fresh one. Buttons not clicking properly? New ones installed. Batteries are one of the most common replacement parts. Apple requires refurbished devices to meet strict battery health standards. So most renewed iPhones get brand new batteries, sometimes brand new screens, and often new outer shells. After repairs, a device receives a new grading, essentially a second opinion. Some devices qualify as like new, and others fall somewhere between very good and acceptable. The grading might sound trivial, but it determines where the phone ends up. The best refurbished devices return to Apple and carriers, sold as certified pre-owned units with warranties. Others enter the booming secondary market, resold by large retailers, online marketplaces, and refurbishers across the US. And for phones that fall short of refurbishable quality, they become donors. A cracked phone with a working logic board might give up its processor. A water-damaged device with a flawless camera might donate that lens to another unit. Even a badly scratched phone can provide screws, brackets, antennas, or speaker components. iPhone parts are recycled internally more often than people realize. But eventually, every device reaches a point where refurbishment makes no sense. Maybe the logic board is dead. Maybe every component is too degraded. Maybe the device has suffered one too many drops from someone's gym shorts pocket on a treadmill. This is where the story takes a dramatic turn and where the most viral part of the iPhone afterlife begins. Because Apple built a machine specifically designed for this purpose. A machine that can take apart an iPhone at a speed and precision no human can match. A machine with a name. Chapter 3. Meet Daisy, Apple's iPhone-destroying recycling robot. If Apple ever decided to launch a superhero franchise, Daisy would be the star. Daisy is Apple's custom-built iPhone recycling robot, a mechanical system designed to disassemble iPhones with surgical precision. She can take apart up to 1.2 million iPhones a year, turning dead, damaged, or unfixable devices into neatly separated components. It's both mesmerizing and unsettling. A robot built to destroy what millions of people still desire. Phones enter Daisy's system on a conveyor. In seconds, robotic arms pop out screws, remove displays, detach the battery, disconnect the logic board, strip out the taptic engine, and separate rare metals that humans could never reach without risking damage or injury. The most impressive part is Daisy's ability to extract materials that normally get lost during traditional shredding. iPhones contain tiny amounts of incredibly valuable elements: gold, silver, palladium, tungsten, aluminum, cobalt, copper, and even trace rare earth metals. These materials power the electronics industry, and they're getting harder to mine every year. Daisy doesn't just remove parts, she recovers resources. The gold alone is astonishing. A single iPhone contains about 30 milligrams of gold, a tiny amount in one device, but enormous when multiplied. According to e-waste experts, 1 ton of mined gold ore might yield 1 to 2 grams of gold. But 1 ton of old iPhones? It contains more gold than many gold mines produce from rock. This is why Daisy exists. Traditional recycling shreds electronics, mixing metals together in a way that's difficult and expensive to separate. Daisy disassembles iPhones in a controlled way that preserves pure metals, making them far easier to recover and reuse. The process is part of Apple's long-term goal: reduce reliance on newly mined resources and create a closed-loop system where old devices become the raw materials for new ones. But Daisy isn't the final step. After she completes her robotic surgery, the separated material streams. Bits of aluminum, copper, gold-bearing components, rare earth magnets are shipped to specialized recyclers. This is where some of the most dramatic transformation happens. This is the part of the journey most people never see, because it happens far away from Apple stores, trade-in counters, or sleek refurbishment labs. It takes place in the industrial backstage of America, the e-waste facilities. These places don't look like anything Apple would put in a commercial. There are no soft white walls, no minimalist displays, no ambient soundscapes playing in the background. Instead, picture cavernous warehouses filled with mountains of old electronics, heavy machinery humming nonstop, forklifts whirring past, and conveyor belts carrying the remains of devices that once contained our entire digital lives. This is where the phones that even Daisy can't save, the totally dead, waterlogged, snapped in half, hopelessly outdated devices go to meet their final transformation. Chapter 4. America's e-waste facilities, where dead phones are reborn. When an iPhone is beyond repair and beyond reuse, when it's cracked beyond recognition or so old that it can't even run modern apps, it becomes part of the country's massive e-waste stream. The US produces more than 6 million tons of electronic waste every year, and smartphones make up a surprisingly large portion of it. At an e-waste facility, the journey begins with sorting. Workers and automated systems scan and identify the type of device, separating smartphones from tablets, laptops, cords, batteries, and mixed electronics. It might look chaotic, but it's surprisingly organized. Each category of device requires a different processing method, and the first step is making sure everything ends up in the right place. Once sorted, the phones go through a special stage that most people don't even think about: data destruction. Even if a phone is dead or damaged, recyclers have strict protocols to ensure no personal information can be recovered. Some facilities use machines that physically crush memory chips. Others use high heat systems that melt components into unrecognizable forms. By the time a phone moves to the next step, its digital past is permanently erased. This brings us to the part of the process that feels almost brutal. Dead phones get fed into industrial shredders, powerful machines with steel teeth designed to chew through anything: glass, aluminum, circuitry, even hardened steel screws. Watching a shredding line in action is like watching a blender for electronics. Entire phones vanish in seconds, reduced to a rain of fragments falling onto conveyor belts. Those fragments, tiny pieces of metal, plastic, glass, and circuitry, travel to giant separators. These machines sort materials by weight, magnetic properties, and electrical conductivity. Steel gets pulled aside by magnets. Aluminum travels down one channel. Copper and wiring go another direction. Plastics get isolated into separate streams. It's organized destruction, and it's surprisingly elegant once you understand what's happening. But the most valuable materials, the ones inside the logic boards, need a different kind of extraction. And that's where the real treasure begins. Chapter 5. Smelting and gold extraction. Mining iPhones instead of mountains. Once the shredded pieces are sorted, the most valuable components, usually circuit boards, connectors, and anything containing traces of precious metals, are shipped to smelting facilities. If you've never seen a smelter, imagine the complete opposite of a genius bar. These industrial furnaces operate at temperatures high enough to melt metal, vaporize impurities, and reduce complex components into their pure elemental forms. The goal is simple: reclaim valuable materials and make them useful again. Inside a melting furnace, the gold embedded in tiny connectors and circuitry begins to separate. Silver, copper, palladium, and platinum group metals rise and settle at different layers. When the molten mixture cools, it becomes a solid brick, a metal ingot containing the extracted materials. Here's where the story becomes astonishing. Remember the gold we mentioned earlier? A single iPhone only contains a tiny amount, around 30 milligrams, barely enough to see with the naked eye. But when you process phones by the tens of thousands, something incredible happens. A ton of old iPhones contains more gold than a ton of ore pulled out of many gold mines. That's why smelting facilities love receiving old smartphones. They're like mini treasure boxes filled with concentrated amounts of precious metals. A gold mine might require moving mountains of rock and earth to extract a few grams of gold. A mountain of old iPhones, on the other hand, yields gold, copper, silver, rare earth, all from devices that Americans consider trash. What happens to that recovered material? Some of it goes back to electronics manufacturers. Some gets sold to metal refineries. Some becomes part of other industries entirely: jewelry, automotive components, aerospace technologies, and industrial equipment. And yes, in a twist worthy of a sci-fi novel, some of those metals eventually make their way back into brand new smartphones. Which means it's entirely possible that your old cracked iPhone 7 has already lived its second life inside someone's iPhone 15. But before we close the loop, there's another angle to this story. Something that explains why this system exists, why it's growing every year, and why Apple spends enormous resources building robots like Daisy. It has nothing to do with nostalgia and everything to do with numbers. Chapter 6. Closing the loop. Why the afterlife of an iPhone matters. The US has one of the highest smartphone replacement rates in the world. Americans upgrade more frequently, buy newer models faster, and discard older devices sooner than most other countries. The result? A tidal wave of old iPhones entering the trade-in, refurbishing, and recycling system every single year. This sheer volume makes old iPhones extremely valuable, not just as used devices, but as resources. Apple's recycling efforts aren't just PR. The company knows that the materials inside iPhones are becoming harder to mine, harder to source ethically, and more expensive as global demand increases, creating a circular economy where old devices replenish the supply chain for new ones. It's not just environmentally responsible, it's strategic. Every old iPhone that gets recycled properly helps reduce the need for freshly mined metals. It reduces the environmental impact of extraction. It lowers supply chain risk. And it creates a sustainable loop where yesterday's technology becomes tomorrow's raw material. The refurbishment ecosystem benefits too. Millions of Americans buy certified refurbished devices every year. Those phones provide affordable options for families, students, small businesses, and anyone who wants an iPhone without paying flagship prices. Meanwhile, the trade-in system keeps devices flowing back to Apple and major refurbishers, ensuring phones don't sit unused in drawers for decades. When trade-ins thrive, fewer devices go to waste and more enter the resale market or recycling pipeline. And for the devices that truly cannot be saved, smelters and e-waste facilities ensure that even the tiniest trace of gold, copper, and palladium gets a second chance. Every step of this process, trade-ins, refurbishment, robotic disassembly, industrial shredding and smelting, exists to squeeze as much value as possible out of a device that once fit in your pocket. Nothing is wasted unless it absolutely has to be. Which brings us full circle to the question we started with. Chapter 7. The Big Reveal. Where old iPhones really go. So what happens to old iPhones in the US? Some are traded in and resold. Some are refurbished and given new batteries, new screens, new life. Some become donors for other devices. Some are handed to Daisy, Apple's recycling superhero who disassembles them one piece at a time. Some go to e-waste shredders, where they're separated, smelted, and transformed into precious metals. And some, in a poetic twist, become part of the next generation of iPhones. It's a cycle most consumers never see. A cycle powered by old devices that still contain incredible value. A cycle where a pile of forgotten tech can be worth more, gram for gram, than the ore coming out of a gold mine. And that's the hidden afterlife of old iPhones. A journey from trade-in counters to repair labs. From Apple's recycling robots to the furnaces that turn dead devices into pure gold. Each phone becomes part of a much larger story. One that blends technology, recycling, and the surprising value of the things we stop using. If this deep dive opened your eyes or taught you something new, stick around. There's an entire world of hidden processes and behind-the-scenes systems waiting to be uncovered, and we're just getting started. So make sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories about how everyday things are made, reused, and reinvented. What should we explore next? The comment section is wide open.